Your Humanities Half Hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Happedays and Tiro, welcome to your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry, and today we're looking back, so to say, at the evolution of sports in our Marianas community, and we're here today with one of the instrumental, I would say, founders of modern sports in the CNMI, Dr. Kurt Barnes, back in Saipan. Dr. Kurt, can I call you Kurt, or should I call you
I
Kurt?
like Kurt, because... You know, I'm an identical triplet.
I didn't know
and
that.
And the only identity I have in life is my first name. So anybody that calls me Mr. Barnes, you know, they're calling 3 other people Mr. Barnes. And so I have no problem with people calling me Kurt. So.
Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
You lived here for 40 years. You left about 4 years ago. What brings you back?
Well... You know, I'll tell you why I left to begin with. As I said, I'm an identical triplet, and one day I got to thinking maybe I should spend the rest of my life with my triplet brothers. So I just up and left with my family, and we went to California, near where my brothers live. Actually, I lived a couple blocks from one brother, and the other brother lived in the Bay Area. And after a couple months, the one in the Bay Area died of liver cancer. So it was a good thing I left, and I could be with him in his final days. And I have no understanding on why I left and how I knew this was going to happen. I didn't know. So I'm glad I was there, and I'm glad I gave up everything to go there and be with him. And then 2 months later, the other brother got blood on his spinal cord, and he almost died. He made it, and he's 100% well now, so we do a lot of things together that we missed out on over the last 40 years. So.
Well, we want to welcome you back.
Thank you.
And
the reason I came back was,
why are you here, but
for 2 reasons. One, I hadn't seen my son and his family in 4.5 years, so I thought it was time to come back, and I did. And at the same time, I brought my grandson, my daughter Kimberly's son, with me, and he's trying out to be on the national soccer team. And so we've been spending quite a bit of time down at the soccer complex, which is absolutely fabulous. And if people haven't gotten down to see that, they should go down and see what a real sports complex looks like.
Now, you originally came here, I believe, in 1969 with the Peace Corps.
Actually, I came in the end of 1966.
Oh, okay.
In the Peace Corps, yeah.
What was that like? What were your impressions when you got here, and what kind of sports were being played then?
The only sports being played then was basketball, and it was at Mount Carmel, at the Quonset Hut open air gym, and only 6 teams could play in the league that they had. They did some fast pitch softball, they did some baseball, and they did some volleyball, and they did some women's fast pitch softball, and that was about it for the sports that they had here.
Was Saipan what you expected when you got here?
I had no idea what I was getting into, but I'm glad I was assigned to Saipan. I guess the Peace Corps administration looked at my background, saw that I had a bachelor's degree in physical education, and so they assigned me to Saipan, even though I trained as a TSL, teaching English as a second language teacher. So my first class here on Saipan was 4th grade, and Pete Pangilinan was the head teacher for that class, and there were some really smart kids in that class, and I really enjoyed that. Actually, I had 4 classes, and it was really enjoyable to do that, but I didn't like teaching Tessel at all. But I used to teach PE classes, and I had never done that before because I was right out of college, and I didn't really know what I was going to do. But it became naturally, and I helped a Peace Corps volunteer, one of my friends. She didn't know how to teach PE, so I did her classes, and she helped me out in other ways. So I taught 2 classes, and then the District Commissioner of Education, Howard Kerstetter, and the principal of the elementary school, Fred Ekman, they asked me to move to Central Education and become the physical education coordinator, which I did. I accepted as quick as I could. I used to drive around Saipan in a pickup, and I used to go to school, and I would teach PE classes. I teach tumbling and gymnastics and soccer and football and basketball.
Wow, so it sounds like you were really exposing the kids to new sports that maybe they'd never had the opportunity to either play or maybe even hear about.
That's correct. I even did square dancing and folk dancing, and whether the kids admit it or not, especially the male students, they really like that, and they have to play their role and put their heads down and all this kind of stuff, but they really, really liked it. And I've always included dance in any curriculum that I've had, because I think there's a great physical fitness component to any kind of dance. So I was lucky that I had some records and a phonograph that at my command I could teach those things. So.
What do you think is the importance of physical education, and especially for the Marianas at that time and the new things you were bringing in? Why was it important?
I think it was important because we were teaching, I was able to teach basic motor skills in all different kind of activities. I also was able to imprint in their minds basic health components, health philosophy, and fitness philosophy. It sounds good, but it's not always easy to do those things, but that's what I tried to do. And then we did some after-school sports too, and we had buses that would take us to different schools. We had a home and away thing going on with the elementary schools.
What were the facilities like back then?
The only facility that was really here was, as I said, the basketball court at Mount Carmel. It was a cement floor, long, narrow building with a Quonset roof, an elephant Quonset roof, and people came every night to watch the basketball games. And then there was a baseball diamond, but it wasn't kept up. And before every league, we had to go in and do a lot of maintenance on the field. But at least there were things to get out and play. And then we made volleyball courts on either sand or on grass. And one year we had 18 teams in the men's volleyball league, and we had a traveling team. We had 3 different courts, and one was in San Roque, one was at Hopwood, and one was by Rodolfo's restaurant. No, that wasn't there then. That was where the other one was. And people came out and watched it, and we had 18 teams, a lot of people that got involved in it. Plus we had a women's league, too, of about 6 or 7 teams. So I did all that in Peace Corps, and I was always busy, and I didn't get compensated for it. I didn't want to get compensated. Even today, I've never been paid for anything that I've done here on Saipan. So I just love watching people compete and get along with each other. That's the important thing. So.
Did you notice anything different culture-wise coming from the States to this community and playing these sports, or was there a lot of commonality?
There's a lot of natural talent here. Nobody had ever taught basic motor skills to anybody until I came. And then I couldn't do this myself. A lot of times I had a lot of help to do this, and I will be the first one to say that. When I was the PE coordinator, I used to run PE workshops for the elementary school teachers. And I'd have like 6 or 7 Peace Corps volunteers help me. So it was them that was doing the work. And I don't want to take credit for that. We all worked together, and we all talked about what are we going to do. What are the activities we're going to give this to the elementary teachers this time. And so, the important thing on this was we always had 100% attendance at these workshops. And not many people can say that about their workshops, but we had 100% attendance.
So there was a real hunger for that at that time.
That, and I carried a big stick, too.
Well, you also went on to become the department chair at Northern Marianas College of the Health, Physical Education, and Athletics Department. Now, did you help set that up, or was that already established?
No, we set it up. I set it up. I was able to hire a really good staff. This is in the early 2000s. Maybe it was the year 2000, maybe a little before the end of the 1900s, the 1990s, I think. But we had Tony Satur, who has a lot of strengths in fast pitch softball and golf. And he's a very dynamic individual. He communicates really well. We had Rufino Algon, he was the gym manager, and he carried a really big stick, and all the rules were followed when he was there. And we also had Jerome Hiromi, who brought a lot of skills to the department and other sports. So we got along fine, and we did a lot of good things in that department at the college.
You wrote a book called Sports Legends of Micronesia. Can you tell us a little bit about what was your, well, number one, your inspiration there?
Well, we did the Micronesian Games in 1969. I was one of the founders of that, along with David M. Sablan, Felix Verballiman, and a Peace Corps volunteer named Albert Snyder. And the four of us together were able to pull that off with a lot of other help, too. And I got to know a lot of the athletes from the different districts that came here. And a few years after this, I started being able to travel around the districts. I worked in Palau for 4 years, and there were students from all over Micronesia at the Occupational Center in Palau. And I would bring up a name, like Eliezer Sabalt, a great sprinter from Palau, and, how's he doing, what's he doing, all this. And, the answer was, he passed away. And Claire Joshua, a great sprinter from Palau, she passed away. So I was finding all these great athletes had passed away for some reason. And I thought, well, wait a minute. We need to get something down in black and white that memorializes these people and showed everybody in the future what they had accomplished, whether they were alive or not. The other thing is there was a lot of misinformation on some things, and the book set all those things straight. So and that's the reason I did that, to get information out. And I found in my research the only person who ever did any statistics and kept them was our very own Tanco, Francisco Palacios. And he can go back 40, 50 years, especially in baseball. And he can pull out any record that he wanted to, or anybody had played. He could pull out his record and show you what he had done. Now, unfortunately, softball records got burnt in a fire in a storeroom about 20, 30 years ago, so we don't have those records. But when I traveled throughout Micronesia, there were no records. There were absolutely no records. So another reason to get things down in writing as best as I could.
And our own baseball field here at the Oleai Sports Complex is named after Tunco. So
yeah, that's how important he was.
For those, I remember the baseball games, and he'd be sitting up there behind the catcher, writing stuff down.
Yeah, my friend Rick Duenas told me about him. He said that every softball, every baseball game ever played on Saipan, Frank, and many times his wife would sit there and score the game, and a lot of times it was cold. The wind was blowing. I don't want to say cold like in Minneapolis, but a little bit cold, and the wind was blowing. They had to have a blanket around.
You mean like 82?
Yeah, they have a blanket around them. And then at the end of the game, all the players somebody would take their hat off and pass it around, and people would throw in money, and then they'd take it over and they would give it to Tanco.
Really?
I don't know how much money. We're not talking a lot of money, but it was something that he could use.
A token of thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what a wonderful individual that Frank was, and to do this, even without the donations.
Yeah.
And I'm sure nobody knows that. And so I know it's truth of what he was doing. So.
Well, we're chatting today with Dr. Kurt Barnes, highlights from his experience with the evolution of sports in the Marianas, and we'll be back with more after this break.
Hafaday, Tito, and greetings from the Northern Marianas Humanities Council. This is Board Chairman Isa Ariola. We are so pleased to be celebrating our 30th anniversary this year with you. Our mission remains to navigate and explore the human experiences of the indigenous and diverse peoples of the Commonwealth by enriching their lives through research, dialogue, programs, and publications. If you have not yet participated in any of our council activities, make this your year. We look forward to welcoming you into our humanities family as we navigate the human experience together.
Welcome back to Your Humanities Half Hour. We're looking back on sports in the Marianas with Dr. Kurt Barnes, who had a hand, it sounds like, in almost everything that was happening here. You're also a CNMI Sports Hall of Famer. Did you help create the CNMI Sports Hall of Fame? I know you were the chair of the committee for a while.
Yeah, it was. I went in with the second class. I went in with a great class. The second one, Tony Satur, Frank Palacios, and a female athlete by the name of Irene Halpert, and myself. The first class was Bill and Jean Sokovich, Mike Villagomez, and the great Tony Regolofoy. And I believe the Hall of Fame was set up that sports associations were supposed to nominate people to be considered into the Hall of Fame. Well, in the 2000s, 2005, 2006, the people who were on the sports associations didn't know who was playing sports back in 1970, 1980, 1960, and it became a problem. So we set up a committee, or Namasa set up a committee. I was the chair, and there were three members or four members, and four or five of us would decide from all the nomination letters that we got who were going to go in that year.
Thanks.
And so it took a nomination letter to be considered, and I know a lot of people go around Saipan saying that the committee keeps certain people out of the Hall of Fame. And that's not true. You have to write a letter. Somebody has to write a letter and list your statistics and your bio and what you did and why you should be considered for the Hall of Fame. I did that until I left, and now I think they have a committee, but I don't know who's on it. So.
You mentioned the Northern Marianas Sports Association. You were also involved with that. What kind of work were they doing in the time you were involved?
Well, it was about the time that the sports complex was turned over to Namasa from the government, and so Namasa became the facilitator of the complex. So it was Namasa's job to maintain it and schedule the use of it. So what I did was, and the track at that time became unusable, had bubbles all over it with the rubber surface. But the interesting thing with that track is it lasted 12 to 14 years, especially in the hot sun here on Saipan, which is incredible. Most tracks only last 6 or 7 years. Ours lasted 12 to to 14 years. I don't know exactly what it was. And so it was past time to rip out the surface and put a new one on. So I wrote a grant. It took me 2 years to write the grant that where the Housing Authority, HUD, provided the funding, $1 million. Actually, it was $700,000 plus we found other money to make it, to resurface it. So that's one thing I did. I did a lot of other things with the masa. So
we actually ran into each other last week at the launch ceremony for the Northern Marianas Pacific Minigames 2022 right there at the Oleai Sports Complex. What was going through your mind when you were sitting in that ceremony and thinking about how far we've come and where we're going to be with all these athletes coming next year?
That's an interesting question. I was sitting there thinking about things. I was thinking, most of my thoughts were from 69, because I was the same exact spot as the track and field facility. And I was thinking about Eliza Sabolt running and the athletes from the Marianas running on that track, Jess Pua throwing the shot put. And then I look around and we got an all-rubber track and field. Now, back then in 69, it was a coral track with motor oil put down for the lines. But it was great.
I thought you were going to say to keep the dust down, because they used to do that too, I think.
No, we'd water and use a roller, and it was a very, very fast surface. It's just you didn't want to fall down and you could see all skinned up. But we had a great track meet because nobody knew anything else. They didn't know what existed. I don't even think there was rubber tracks back there then either. So those things were going through my mind, how we really advanced. And then people like Jerry Tan, who's a mover, and Ben Babauta, who's the CEO of the Minigames coming up. And by the way, I'm going to predict that this is going to be the best Minigames that the Pacific Games Association has ever held. It is going to be dynamic because it's going to be fantastic.
Why do you say that?
Well, the people who are involved in organizing that, it is going to, and they've started a year ahead of time. That's unheard of in Micronesia. You see all the flags up. Usually you don't put the flag poles up and the day before the events start. No, we put it up a year ahead of time. That's how these people are moving, and they're going to have a fantastic event. I think there's 9 sports, and they're all going to be well contested. And I'm telling everybody, get out to the track when the track and field is on. There's going to be some great events. There's going to be world-class athletes. Athletes that go to the Olympics will be on that track. Go out and watch it. It's June 17th, 2022. Go out there and watch it. You'll really be amazed at how great some of these athletes are in the Pacific Ocean. And it'll just make you want to practice harder to get at their level.
So I have a little bit of a technical question, which it's an important question related to sports in general and also to the mini games. It's the role of the federation. You hear this said a lot, like the different federations, and then they have a role to play when it comes to big games like this. Could you explain that to us so that when we hear people talk about this federation or that federation, we can have an idea of what they are exactly and why it's important?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, let's take track and field. Or it's called athletics in Oceania, but the track and field. The Track and Field Federation is in charge of everything about the track and the competition. It's up to them to get all the officials. Yeah, Australia brings in the Oceania Athletics Association and the administrators. They come up and they bring a lot of officials with them. But it takes around 40 or 50 officials to officiate a track and field meet. So there'll be about 30, 40 people that will be needed from Saipan or from Sinamai. They're also in charge of ordering and providing all the equipment. Now, any athlete can bring their own equipment. It has to be checked and weighed and so forth like that, so it's legal. But all the hurdles and the steeplechase jumps and stuff like that, everything has to be provided by the hosting federation. So they're really in charge. The local track and field federation is in charge of everything out there. And the same thing with all the other venues. The local federations are in charge of everything, the equipment and the logistics and setting up the schedule. What events are on this day, what events are on that day. And if there's a record that's broken, they have to go through a protocol to make sure it's done correctly. Sometimes you don't get another chance to break a record. So, yeah, you can break records out there, and that's the whole idea is to get your personal best and get as many records as you can.
Well, we hope to see a lot of that next year.
Well, you'll see some really good competition out there. So,
I want to give you the chance to maybe summarize what you feel has been the highlight of your role as an educator here in the Marianas.
Wow, that's a good question. Well, I'm going to go back to the college, and I was the department chair for health, physical education, and athletics. And I started that department, and I was able to get personal health class as a core course, because the health habits here on Saipan weren't very good. And if personal health is taught correctly, it can leave an indent in everybody, in the student's mind, and if they practice what they learn, they can become healthy people. I try to do some things innovatively. I had a healthy food day, and it sounds so simple, but it's not. Everybody would bring a healthy food. And I'd say, okay, I didn't call on students. That's one thing I never did, is call on students. I said, okay, some student has to go in the front and explain what they brought. And everybody had the opportunity to go to the front. And so the student would come up and say, this is an orange. And I said, okay, tell us about the orange. Why is it healthy? So hopefully they had researched it and come up with, it's got vitamin C in it and this and that, and you need it for this. Or one class I had, a student brought a Butterfinger candy bar. I think one day somebody brought an empanada. And the grease is running down their hand.
That's debatable right there.
I like it, that's my middle name, or it used to be. But, I did things that get students engaged and active. We'd meet at the pathway, and we'd walk once in a while. We'd go to the gym and stretch and do some physical fitness things. And I'd bring in Barry Wickstrom would show Tai Chi, and students really liked that. And all the students would have to get up and practice some of the Tai Chi moves. And, we tried to do things that they had never seen before, never heard about, and they get to practice it, and maybe it leaves a dent in their lives, and maybe they'll continue to do that. That was the whole thing I tried to do. So I just hope I was successful.
Well, I appreciate that when we started our interview today, you talked about your brothers, which is obviously very important to you. You're 80 years old now. Could I ask you, what have you found is really important in life?
Oh, wow. Well, family is really, really important. I don't care where you live or how far away your families are, but it's just a special time when you can get with your family. And I haven't seen my son in 4.5 years, and we spend every day, almost every meal this past week together, along with his daughter, his wife, and my grandson. And actually my daughter and her daughter is here. It's easier to see her in Hawaii than it is to fly all the way to Saipan every now and then. But family is so important, and you can win all the gold medals in the world, and you can be a huge success, but I think family is far more important than anything else. So, my opinion.
Any final thoughts before we go?
Well, no, I really thank you for having me on, and I just want everybody to realize that in 1 year from now, and get out to watch the mini games, get out there and watch the 9 venues, and especially the track and field. You'll come away in awe at some of the skill levels. There are Olympic caliber athletes out there. There are world-class athletes out there, and I don't know who they are. I don't know who's coming from some of the different nations, but they will be there, and you will see them right away that they are so far ahead of anybody else. So,
thank you so much, Kurt.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. This is great.
We've been chatting today with Dr. Kurt Barnes, longtime Saipan resident, about highlights in his lifetime with the evolution of sports in our community. This has been your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
This program was supported by a We the People grant awarded to the Northern Marianas Humanities Council from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.